Good morning. Today is day 15 of my energy drink withdrawal program, so it's T minus 15. Yesterday I said it was T minus 26, but it was T minus 16 yesterday. It's Friday, May 10th, 2013. It's about 7:20. And again, everything's going okay. I've reached the halfway point. So right now, this is about 100 milligrams of caffeine plus all the other stuff in energy drinks. So it's about the equivalent of a cup of coffee. So in the last 2 weeks, I've cut my intake by 50%. And so now I'm basically just drinking a cup of coffee in the morning. So the next 2 weeks should be the most interesting because I will be going under a cup of coffee. And it'll be interesting to see if I get headaches or mood swings or anything. I was still looking forward to this morning. I almost have a event to go to this morning. And I was thinking I would do this video afterwards, after the event, just as a test to see if I could go without my morning coffee or caffeine, and I decided I would just do this video real quick so I could get the caffeine. So I'm still hooked on these things, but and last night I had some more urges. I drank some, I'm doing the whole just drinking Koolaid because it tastes a little bit like this to fool myself. So I'm still on the program and I'm hoping I get through it. I finished this book yesterday, Starbucked, and I guess I'll just go over some statistics. It's an interesting business story about how this guy, Howard Schultz, built this company. He bought the company from a small coffee shop in 1987. It had originally opened in 1971, so it had been around for about 16 years. And he had a fateful trip, I guess, to Italy in the early 80s while he was working for Starbucks, and went into a little espresso coffee house and saw this coffee house culture and people drinking espresso, and thought that, I don't know, I guess a light went off in his head and he thought he could mimic something like that in America, which turned out to be true, and so he made it a reality. And he bought the company in 87 and started building these coffee houses, and it started the explosion of the coffee house culture in America, which turned out to be much different than originally when coffee first came into the world, or into the Western world. Coffee houses were sort of dens of rabble-rousing or something, you know, or intellectual discourse. I mean, people would get together and talk about, it would provide a spot for people to get together and foment plots, or, you know, think about new scientific discoveries, whereas the coffee house, sort of rambling, but it has now evolved into sort of a part of culture, or a part of the establishment now. They're very cozy and comfortable and representing sort of a corporate behemoth, which is Starbucks. So the character of coffee houses changed a little bit. I'm going to be a little bit all over the map on this particular segment. This guy, by the way, who wrote this, Taylor Clark, it was a really good book. I thought it was a fair assessment. It wasn't a hit piece on Starbucks, although he himself doesn't go to Starbucks, and before he was writing this book, he was not too happy with this idea of, he came from a town that had a lot of cultural distinction and didn't like the idea of Starbucks sort of creating this cultural homogeneity or sameness everywhere. Okay, I may not be summarizing this perfectly, but in any case, Starbucks has become the second biggest retail chain, food chain in the world after McDonald's. It's huge. Let's see, U.S. buys 1/3 of the world's coffee, most on the planet. That's not really relevant here. And Starbucks sort of got people to pay more for their coffee, than they normally would. I never got into the Starbucks craze myself, as I mentioned yesterday. But by they're providing more than coffee. They're providing a place to go, an experience. I guess they've come up with the idea of a third place between home and work, where you could hang out, drink coffee, be comfortable, and built a chain around it. So they did this. Okay. When this book was written, they had 7.8 billion in revenue, and now 2012, last year, they had 13.3 billion, so they're still growing. And when this was written, they were growing really big, so they've still been growing, 13.3 billion. It's a big company. They had 13,000 stores in 2007. Now they have 18,000, or closer to 20,000 now. Their goal is to get 40,000 stores. Like when in 1989 there were only 585 coffee houses in America, and when this was written there were 24,000. Not just Starbucks, but all coffee houses. And Starbucks sort of started this whole craze of a lot of coffee houses, not just Starbucks, although they completely dominate the industry. They're like half or more of the industry. So that changed the landscape of America. The average customer comes in, this book said 18 times a month, although I read elsewhere 6 times a month. So it's the most frequented retailer in the world. So people, there's a lot of brand loyalty. They come back and back more than really any other retailer. Largely because coffee is an addictive substance, so people are coming in for the hit. But they could go elsewhere for it. Average Starbucks has over $1 million in revenue. That's pretty good. Every store, every one of those 20,000 stores. Also, their drip coffee, although they're sort of known for their espresso drinks and gourmet drinks, their drip coffee has more caffeine than any other major brand. And that's interesting for this story, for me. Oh my gosh, I'm almost out of time. Because I'm going to actually start up again. As I was mentioning, they have the most coffee, they have the strongest coffee. So from my point of view in this series, I'm concerned with basically caffeine addiction is the main issue of this series and how to get off it. And if the coffee is stronger, that's making people more addicted. Also, insofar as they make it sort of cool or trendy to drink coffee, I think that gets more people into the coffee fold, so that gets more people into the addiction mode. So I'm just gonna, I learned a little bit about Starbucks here. It's a huge company. I personally don't go to Starbucks that often, but I don't avoid it either. But I will follow it more. Let's see. Oil and coffee are the 2 most traded commodities in the world. I think I mentioned that before. And as big as Starbucks is, supposedly, according to this, they only buy 2% of the world's coffee. So the coffee story is much bigger than Starbucks. And there are 4 big conglomerates: Nestle's, Procter & Gamble, Philip & Morris, and Musini Zanetti, that purchase 60% of the Americans' coffee supply. So the story is bigger than Starbucks. Okay, maybe I'll edit this video down a little bit. The Starbucks story, I will follow that more. Program's still going good. This drink is still tasting good. It's a little weaker still. I'm halfway through the program. And that's it. I think the next book I'm going to read maybe is this book called Buzz, The Science and Lore of Alcohol and Caffeine. I think this is a pretty good book. And it may go over some of the mechanisms of caffeine addiction. Okay, thanks for watching.